Hello and welcome to another episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast with me, Mark Bracknell, Managing Director of Theo James Recruitment. Today, we welcomed on Malcolm Humble, the Managing Director of Arian EMS. I absolutely loved this episode. It took me right back to the early days of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast, where we talked to a lot of people who essentially started out on the shop floor, like Malcolm, became a leader like Malcolm, and in Malcolm's case then went on to own his own business, which he's now sold and still works in. And we talked about the full journey, and I absolutely loved it. We talked about him starting out in the industry, loving electronics, learning more from the bad leaders and the bad traits of leaders, and ultimately what led him to start his own business. And we talked about the full journey and actually how leadership has evolved and how the importance of communication in leaders is absolutely essential requirement to be able to get people to do what you want to do. And then the good, the bad and the ugly of growing a business. And it was just great to speak to a proper British entrepreneur within manufacturing, but actually someone who's still got so much passion to do what he does and ultimately leave with a legacy. And he talked in detail about that and how organically he's grown Arian EMS to what it is today. I absolutely loved it. There was moments in this podcast where I got goosebumps what Malcolm was saying, and I took so much away. So thank you. It was a real privilege to interview Malcolm. So please sit back, watch, listen, whatever you wanted to do. Please, as ever, just hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps grow the show. Just one quick plug. We are doing a fantastic event for the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast community at New College Durham, April 30th. We've got some amazing speakers, panels, workshop. It's definitely grown arms and legs. It's a £15 suggested ticket price, which all goes to the Red Sky Foundation. So please get your tickets because they will sell out fast. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy the episode. Excellent. A massive warm welcome today to Malcolm Humble, the MD of Arian EMS. How are you doing, Malcolm? All right?
Great. Thanks very much.
Yes, good stuff, mate. Look, I'm really looking forward to this. We've had a really good pre-chat a few weeks ago about you, the business, your journey, and it's going to be what I class as a bit of an old school episode when we sort of just talk through all the lessons learned, which I absolutely love. But before we delve into that, first question I ask everyone that comes on is, what does it mean to you to be a leader, would you say?
That's a really weird question. I think it's very, very individual, isn't it? I mean, some people see themselves as I remember I was actually asked about the entrepreneur forum, and it was like you had to explain why you became an entrepreneur. And I was thinking, well, I've never ever seen me as being an entrepreneur. I actually ended up Googling it to see exactly what the definition was. Um, and I guess, yeah, I mean, I'd basically come back and said, well, yeah, you are an entrepreneur. And I think along with that is you'd naturally become a leader of the team that you work with. But it's all feeling comfortable with the leader term, because clearly you do lead people. But I've always been the type of leader who leads from inside the group rather than at the front of the group. I think there's occasions when you have to shoot off on your horse and pull people with you. But I think more often than not, I've always been the type of guy who would work with everybody to take them forward rather than like shouting, "This is the way forward." I've never been one of these that thinks it's every morning you have to have this rally call. If communication's required, I think it's great, and you need to do it, and you need to do it competently. But I think sometimes, trying to look the boss is poor.
Yeah. I massively, I agree with all that. Interestingly, I was also a member of the Entrepreneurs Forum, and I also remember that question, and I also struggle with it because I've never seen myself as an entrepreneur. I own a business, and I see myself as a business owner. So by definition, that is technically an entrepreneur, but I would class an entrepreneur as something I'm not, which is someone who juggles various businesses but actually, the two, can be very alike. And I really like the definition of leadership there. And I really like what you said about being in the inside and because leading isn't always showing what to do. It's guiding people in different ways. Now, the reason I like it is it's authentic to you, isn't it? You know, I think some people, a lot of people, and I put myself in this bracket, stress myself out by trying to lead in a certain way because that's what the book said, or that's how I've been led before by someone who looked really comfortable at it, but it wasn't how I felt comfortable with, and it didn't
Yeah.
feel authentic. Did you ever struggle with that, or were you always quite strong, and this is how you're going to lead?
Um, it's a funny one. I'm not really sure because I went from when I was a younger bloke, I went through a transition of like working on a shop floor, and I became a trainer, and then I became a supervisor. And one of the niggling doubts about becoming a supervisor in my head was how do you transition from being one of the boys till you go home on Friday afternoon, you're one of the boys, you come back in on Monday morning and you're the boss.
Yeah.
Um, and like I say, I was concerned about that, but I never ever had any issues. Um, because like I said, I'm convinced that's because I always worked, from the inside with people, explaining what it was. And it was like, you hear these cliches about shared goals and all this, and I can't stand buzzwords. I hate them. But I guess there is some value in there somewhere where you are actually trying to get people to understand what it is you're trying to do, why you're doing it, and the good reasons for doing it, rather than just standing there and saying, no, this is your job at night, this is your job today, that's your job. And then you're kind of like barking instructions out and you're telling people what they need to do. I think sometimes if you actually tell people what it is that needs to be done and how can you get it done best, then I think you find that you get your way forward a lot faster. Although there are occasions when I was younger and a supervisor and you would have to stamp your feet because there's a line that needs to not be crossed when you've gone from one of the boys to
Yeah.
being a gaffer type of thing. But I transitioned quite well because I was always quite good at communicating with everybody.
And I think that's a really interesting thing to unpick because actually I think that's what people struggle with the most. A lot of people are promoted because they're good engineers or they're good at the job, so they must be good managers, and there's no real
That's
training
right.
to do that. They're just thrown in. The you've already insinuated there that you started off on the shop floor. Was to take it right back very briefly, was manufacturing something you always wanted to get into, or did you fall into it? What was the route in?
I just fell into it,
Hmm.
totally fell into it. When I left school with like no qualifications, or at least the qualifications I had were absolutely awful. I was never motivated by any particular lesson. Um, I mean, I had it in my head I was going to be a pro footballer. And when it became pretty obvious that was never going to happen, then I didn't never had a plan B. But I had like very old school parents. My dad was he worked on the coal mines for 47 years on the face. It was a bit of a hard character to please. Um, and you were never going to sit around doing nothing. You were going to get out there and you're going to earn your crust. So I left school in the September and I got a what in those days used to call them YTs,
Hmm.
youth training
Yep.
programs. And I got that. And you'll never guess what I was doing.
Go on.
Never in a month of Sundays. I was actually training to be a shoe repairer.
Really? Hmm.
Yeah. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. Um, you know, I was always there well on time. I was always like one of the last ones away. And I really enjoyed what I did. But then when I looked around and I saw these 40 something guys, and I was like, really? I mean, I was on 20 quid a week. The old days when you got the cash in a little brown paper packet at the end of the week. Um, and I got the opportunity. There was the local electronics company was actually starting employing people, and I was had the chance to go from 20 quid a week to I think it was about £54 a week. That's a massive hike. So I took that opportunity, and no, I cannot say it. I mean, I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with electronic manufacturing. the actual basic processes and putting stuff together that, all these individual bits and pieces, and you get put them on the board and solder them, etc. And then they actually function. Test it. When you're testing them, you can actually see what these electronic circuits do. And that was I was 17 years old then, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And just went from there. And I always had a mentality where I was always looking for the way to do things the easiest way, which wasn't, I didn't know, sometimes got us into bother with the supervisors, but I don't know, I always did the job the right way. But I can think of a few stories where I wasn't popular with some of the gaffers. But I loved it, absolutely loved it. But
Which is,
it wasn't a planned career move.
it's interesting though, because I think if you reverse engineer well, we use the word entrepreneur, every entrepreneur or whatever role you're in, which is a senior position, right from the start, you loved it, it was a passion. B, you had the discipline, the upbringing to, you mentioned yourself, to be on time, to turn up, the basics that, a lot of people still haven't got. But actually, you weren't ready to just accept that pay packet or doing that. You saw, you had the foresight at that age to see people twice, three times your age who were still doing that job. He didn't want to do it, and I think that way you can see successful people. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
do you think that was and that is probably just, it was that instilled in you, or is that something that you just feel like you were born with to some extent?
I think there was a work ethic
Yeah,
that was instilled. Uh, like I say, like I've got a brother and a sister, and we've never ever been unemployed. We've always been working. Um, and like my dad was up all the time. He worked shifts at the mine. And no, he wasn't one of these guys he would work 7 days a week to
yeah,
make sure that we had food on the table type of thing. So I think you kind of like pick that up.
yeah,
It's incredible actually as you get older. Sometimes you say things and you think, God, I don't know, I sound like my dad,
yeah, yeah.
which is not always a good thing sometimes, I tell you.
Yeah, 100%. And can you remember, because we talk about leadership, I think this is a good moment to almost reflect. And pretty sure it's a while ago, but did you sit there when you weren't a supervisor? When you were on the shop floor, and can you remember ever analysing leaders you had to go, if I'm going to be a leader, I'm not going to lead like that, or actually I'm going to lead that? Did you pick up both the good and the bad?
Um, Definitely pick up the bad.
Yeah,
Because you're literally you're talking about the when I first started working on the shop floor, that'll have been 1977, 78, something like that.
yeah,
And the management style was, I mean, it was just hard nosed stuff. Sit down, do as you're told type of thing, which it was a weird environment we went into because we were actually part of a huge recruitment stage in the business where the IBM the computers
yeah,
who were manufacturing solely for IBM. They were the only customer we had, and there was a lot of young staff in, like a lot of people like similar ages to me. Um, and the old school type of management didn't like lie very well with me. Um, I don't think anybody was frightened to work. I think they were just a bit upset with the type of like styles of management. They would bark orders but we had good supervisors, we had good managers, but they were the ones who tended to like talk to you a bit more,
yeah.
and not just tell you this is what you do, get on with it type of thing. So it's definitely say I've learned more from how those more bad managers than
Mhm.
what there was good managers. And in those days, a managing director was stuck up on a pedestal. You never spoke to them. They were always called Mister whatever. Um, so I would definitely learn more off. I mean, it was like some of the supervisors, the popular supervisors with the management, were the ones who were constantly handing out warnings to people. Do as you're told. You haven't done what you're told. There's a warning type of thing. Well, that was never my style. I mean, if people are giving out, and it's still the same today. I mean, I think things are a lot better these days because you've got so much legislation for employment law and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I think you're kind of like directed a bit more now than what you were. But in the old school days, a lot of the managers would be they would think you were the best supervisor in the world if you were throwing out warnings like confetti, and that to me didn't work.
Yeah.
I was thinking, well, if you keep giving out warnings like confetti, sooner or later it's not going to mean anything. People are just going to say, well, that's just how it is.
Hmm.
So I mean, on the odd occasion I did when I thought I really needed to formalize something, but it wasn't one of my big things.
Yeah.
Um, I remember we did continental shifts, and I remember I had to do something. I can't remember specifically what it was I did, but I did something a little bit different, let's say, where I had guys working opposite breaks, and I give them a few bits and pieces to try and make sure that we cover machines like fully on all of the products that we needed to get out. And I remember my boss when he come in on the Monday morning was a bit surprised that we had getting everything done that we needed. And I said, well, just look at the production plan. I seen that we didn't need that, and that. So it meant I could not bother running these other machines, and I just used the other guys to kind of like fill in for breaks and lunch breaks and stuff like that. And he turned around to us and he says, "Don't you ever give them a thing." And he was really poked about it. And I'm thinking, hold on, you've literally just come in on a Monday morning and you've asked us how the hell I got all this done.
Hmm.
But then on the flip side, you're telling us the way I got it done wasn't the right way.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, after that, I pretty much never took any notice of that guy again. I mean, I worked for him, but I pretty much did my own thing and made sure that what was needed to be done was done. But I wasn't going to be taking any human resources advice off him. That was for sure.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I always find it's fascinating because it's so clear now how businesses have changed for the better, for me, because that dictatorship type culture is rare. It still happens from time to time, and I still do see it, but people don't stand for it, as much as they used to because they don't need to. Ultimately, they'll work for someone else. And it was quite clear, isn't it, that it all came from the top, and it was. I imagine a lot of those people manage like that because that was the culture of the business and that's how they were told to manage. And if they didn't manage like that, they'd be out. And then suddenly you create a
Yeah,
culture of that. That is how it
100%,
is.
100%. That's why I mean, when I've had my own business,
Yeah.
I've always made sure that the culture within the business um, is a more relaxed.
Yeah.
I mean, I would literally see people when before I was a supervisor. I would look at the production lines and I would see people like proper grafting when the supervisor or the manager was there. But then as soon as the supervisor or manager disappeared, you could see the whole atmosphere relax. And I'm thinking, well, a good supervisor, a good manager wouldn't have that effect.
Yeah.
It'd work whether you were there or not.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there's a reason why they're probably thinking, well, the pressure's that high when the supervisor's looking over their shoulder, then they literally need some time to try and, that environment can it be good for manufacturing?
Yeah.
And it never has been good for manufacturing. And that's how you end up getting quality issues and stuff like that. But incredible how many people just don't realize that. But it is what it is, and luckily it's a different world now.
I don't think any organization works well under stress. I don't think anyone works well under stress, but yet there's still a lot of organizations that put stress on people to work harder when typically, I'm sure if there was some science behind it, they would show that people work best when they are less stressed. I appreciate there has to be a level of stress and there has to be a level of stretch in most professions, particularly, particularly technical roles or difficult positions, but yeah, it's great to hear someone who understands the value of that, understands the value of the culture, and you're probably well ahead of your time with that because that's for me something I've only seen over the last sort of 10 years, really, where I've seen companies really adopt that. You mentioned the engineer, the shop floor to supervisor, and you just to touch on that communication point. What advice would you have for people who have been made or into a management role without the experience and do have that concern that they've got to manage their pals in some situations because they have been pals for so long, the colleagues. What advice do you give to someone who's going through that process, do you think?
Don't change overnight. It's as simple as that. I mean, if you flip from one to the other, like literally overnight, then you're gonna have problems.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Um, you've got to have a transition period to give yourself some time to come to terms with what it is that you need to do. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be learning yourself. Um, so that's pretty much the best advice I could give. Just try and give yourself some time. Don't change. Don't think that you're going to become this big, high and mighty boss overnight. I would like to think that if somebody's thought enough of you to give you that job, then you're not going to be like that anyway. But it's important that, like I said before, you take people with you rather than bark out orders and all of a sudden you're this tyrant.
Yeah, it's interesting because often when we ask people, when we're working with people, how they like to be managed, often the responses are the managers, they give them respect, they give them autonomy, they give them trust. Do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily the managers that are very straight talking. It's the ones that they respect, and that respect goes both ways ultimately. And
100%, 100%. I mean, regardless of what you're doing, regardless, you need to earn respect. You're not
yeah,
just going to get it because you've got a title of managing director or whatever your job title is.
yeah,
Um, I think you're dealing with different people now. Shop floor, to a large extent, has changed massively over the last 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, I hated it when it was quite unionized. I remember I worked for a Japanese company, and they had a union. It was very unionized, um, but it was crazy because the people themselves actually weren't that worried about the union. It was more the union reps that were worried about it.
yeah,
So I found that I was always at loggerheads with the local union rep. I'll not name him. He's probably still kicking around somewhere. But I used to have a huge problem with him. He used to refer to the staff as his girls. And I used to really get my goat up. And I says, "You're so condescending. Just, if they're anybody's girls, by the way, they're my girls. They work for me every day of every week. You pop in once a fortnight for have a chat with them."
mhm,
And he was saying, "Oh, you're just trying to stop me doing my job." I said, "I'm actually not. I'm really not. But my job is to try and keep you out of here.
yeah,
The only reason you should come in here is if I have failed in my job, if I've done something that people aren't happy with. It's my job to keep these happy. It's my job to make sure that there isn't any HR issues. Only you come in if I'm not doing what I need to do properly." Anyway, he actually sent a formal letter complaining because I was only 27 at the time, and he sent a letter into the VP, the Japanese guy, and he referred to us as a jumped up young upstart. And I thought that was brilliant, that like absolutely brilliant. But in fairness to him, it wasn't until later on I'd realised. I mean, he'd spent a lot of his years working in the shipyards, so he was very old school.
yeah,
Um, It
yeah.
was I had some really interesting situations with him,
Uh,
but it got to the point where I think he felt like he was being pushed out
yeah, yeah,
because there wasn't any issues to discuss. So
yeah.
when he was going in and everybody was saying, "Well, actually, it's been fine," and I think he was a bit disappointed.
They'd have a job to do. Yeah, it makes perfect
Mm.
sense. Apologies for interrupting this podcast. Very briefly, to tell you about the Manufacturing Leaders Summit, an event I've been wanting to organise for quite some time, and we finally done it with New College Durham, April the 30th, 2026. All money raised goes to Red Sky Foundation, a charity extremely close to my heart that I've raised money for over the last 5 years after losing my dad to a cardiac arrest. It's an amazing charity, and you actually see the effects of the money raised. You'll see the defibrillators going in around the area. The day is going to be amazing. We've got speakers who are TED talkers, we've got an ex-Olympian, we've got authors all around leadership, mentality and manufacturing engineering. We've got an amazing panel of people. We're going to talk about helping young people get into engineering, and then we've got 8 different workshops to choose from. It's going to be an amazing event all around adding value back to manufacturing. Ideally 180 to 200 people are going to be there on the day, and it's a great opportunity to network with like-minded people, other manufacturing leaders. So please attend. Ticket prices are a suggested £15 donation when you sign up via Eventbrite, and we really want you to be there. Tickets are going fast, workshops are getting filled up fast, so please make sure you click the link, which we'll put in the comment section as well. Click the link, share it with anyone else you think could be keen, and I can't wait to see you there. Thank you very much. A lot of people get to a role in the business, and perhaps a very senior role in the business, where they think, I could do this myself, but not many people act on that. Very, very small percentage of people act on that and take the risk and the leap to start their own business. You did. What did it take for you to do that? Was it an opportunity you saw, or what led you to doing what you did?
Bad management,
Okay.
really bad management. If consider, I worked at this Japanese company and took the place. I mean, honestly, it was a nightmare. It was an absolute bunch of raveling when I first started. So I did have to pull a few strings when I was there. At the beginning, at the very start, I wasn't the most popular bloke in the world. But there was absolutely zero discipline in the place. I mean, literally, they were playing kiddies' games on a Friday morning,
Yeah.
water burn fights and stuff like that. It was incredible. I've never seen anything like it before in my life. But then we got that to a point where we went from 40 odd people to a couple of hundred staff, and then I had to get it back. I paid off over 100 people, and then I got made redundant. Fast forward to my Lighton days when I worked at Lighton for 7 or 8 years. Took that place. We had 45 direct employees when I started there, and we peaked at just over 400. But then, for my sins, I was actually tasked with transferring manufacturing of some of our bigger customers to China. Well, I might have been a bit naive, but I didn't think for 1 minute it was going to have such a dramatic effect, because we had took the business up to 67 million within 3 or 4 years, and we were very, very profitable. But anyhow, eventually the powers that be in Taiwan, they decided that they wanted to start manufacturing more stuff in China. I think the direct cost of sale was about 1.5% in China, where it was somewhere between 10 and 11% over here. And then I had shown them that it was how simple it was to move manufacturing into China, making sure you had good supply chain, making sure you had competent processes in the companies you were using, making sure they were reliable, and they weren't going to be fly by night, and they weren't going to change where they were being manufactured. Ended up, I must have paid off about 250 people,
Really?
or possibly more than that, made them redundant, and then I got the bullet. And that was, and I'm not joking, right? It was like, this is poor management.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a fantastic organization with fantastic people. You've invested heavily in manufacturing equipment. You're making good profit. The business is very, very sustainable. But you want to make another 5 or 6 or 7% by moving manufacturing to China. I just saw that as being very narrow-minded.
Yeah.
The finance director, he was a bean counter, a glorified bean counter. He wasn't that bothered, to be honest with you. The chief executive at the time he was on a crusade on his own. He had his own agenda, looking at getting his MBEs or his OBEs or whatever. And and left it all behind. And I thought, nah, I'm not getting back. And if I'm gonna, I mean, I was 40, I think I was about 40 years old at the time, and I'm thinking I have another 25 year to work at least. You know, I'm not gonna have my life dependent on people like that.
Yep.
I want to try and run my business and run it properly. And that was where it went. That's where it came from. And it's worked out, luckily, very, very well.
Yeah, and look, and we talk about entrepreneurship. This is where the why our economy is propped up by SMEs, because people like you and I take the risk, see the opportunity, take the risk, and
Yeah.
that is the frustrating part when the budgets come out and the government don't exactly look favourably on SMEs and the people that prop up the economy essentially. But you've built brilliant businesses in difficult industries and difficult times. No more so probably the last 10 years where there's been black swan event after black swan event and however many barriers we're about to have.
Um,
What's been, I mean, what were the early lessons for you, the first 5 years of owning and growing a business? What were the key lessons you had to take and hit you?
I think a lot of it with me was patience,
Okay.
because I am not a salesman.
Mhm.
You know, if you want to sit down and talk about getting a job done, then fine, I'm your man. I'll
Yeah.
sit there, I'll work out all the pros and cons and what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, all the bits and pieces like that, processes that we need to look at. But if you're wanting me to try and sell you something, I used to pick the phone up and talk to people in the early days, and I just couldn't do it. I mean, I just didn't have.
Wasn't comfortable for you.
If somebody put a barrier up, and then I would just say, "Oh, aye, okay, no problem,"
Yeah.
and move on. Um, and then if I thought I had somebody on the hook, I kind of like assumed it was going to happen the next day or the following day or the following day or the following day. And sometimes I would have to work with people for months.
Mm.
And I've worked with customer or potential customers for like a couple of years before I've getting business off them. And it's a harsh lesson to learn that people don't move in the same time scales as you do. Because like if you say to me like, Martin, I needed something done for next Monday, then okay,
Yeah.
I'll get it done for
You made
next
that
Monday.
one. Yeah.
That was it. That's it. That's it. You just do it.
Mm.
It happens. Um, but everybody doesn't work like that.
Mhm.
So that was one of my biggest challenges because there wasn't any buffer. There wasn't anybody I could turn to. There wasn't anybody I could pass the job to.
Yeah.
Can you give these guys a ring in a couple of days' time or a couple of weeks' time? And the number of times I would go running with my wife, and I mean, we used to run every single night, and we know it would be night after night after night. And I would say to Carol, if this doesn't kick off in the next few months, I'm just going to wrap and get a job. And she would say, just stick at it. You've got zero patience. Just stick at it, and it will work. And it's like, oh, but I feel like I used to say often, I felt like I was playing at having a business because I didn't feel like I was actually doing anything substantial.
Yeah.
Um, but then, once I started getting a customer here and there, and um, it just took off. And like I think I told you the last time we spoke, um, I'm a very hands-on type of person, so it didn't bother me in the least sitting hand assembling PCBs on my own and hand soldering them. Didn't
Yeah.
bother me in the least. It was just what you had to do.
Uh, uh,
I mean, I've seen me sitting at like 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, putting PCBs into little plastic boxes and screwing them in
Yeah.
because I had to deliver them on the Monday. And it's just you do what you have to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've absolutely loved it, but I've had some fairly hair raising times, but I can't say I haven't thoroughly enjoyed my whole career.
Yeah. It is, and I love these sort of conversations because I can resonate with them and I find them fascinating. And because when you first start a business, you're everything, aren't you? You're everything.
Oh,
Do
big
you know what I mean?
step.
You had
Uh,
different every hat, and then as soon as you start hiring, you're everything to everyone. Do you know what I mean? You're the
yeah,
person that tries to fix everything for them. And And likewise, I took probably 7 years to realize that I don't really enjoy management. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I beat myself up about it and tried to get better at it. And I did get better at it, but it's not, it was only when I understood what I enjoyed doing, which is the sales side and the client side, actually for
Mm,
me, I started to create a business that I wanted to work in. You almost become, it's very easy to become a slave to your own business sometimes. And
yeah.
you probably enjoy the day to day of working in a different job, but you don't do it
Mm,
because you're the one creating it. But it's just a very harsh, but obvious lesson people typically do learn too late
mm.
because you do what you've got to do on you to get things done. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think when you're, from my experience anyway, I think some of the biggest decisions I've had to make, or some of the most important decisions I've had to make, um, was like you just said before. When you start a business off, you literally do everything. I've seen me sitting building PCBs. I eventually got a floor soldering machine. I would be cleaning out the floor soldering machine. I would be taking the emptying the bins to the skip, the local waste management
Hmm.
place. Anything, you name it. But buying all the components, there wasn't anybody else to do it, so you just get on with it.
Yep.
And I think the critical decision is, when are you in a position where you can actually bring somebody in?
Yes.
To, you got to pick something out specific that you haven't got time for now. What's the easiest bits to start passing on? How do you do it? You haven't got the money to bring in a purchasing manager.
Hmm.
You've got to bring somebody in, which is what I did. I brought somebody in, taught them, no, taught them how to answer the phone, how to be a receptionist, how to buy components, how to source components, where to find them, how to put a bill of material together, how to cost a bomb, all that types of things. But when you're not really sure whether you've got enough money in the business, getting that balance right, because what ends up happening is, and it happened to me a couple of times, you've only got enough money to pay. You've got five staff and you've only got enough money to pay four. The one person that's not going to get paid, who's
Yeah.
that?
Exactly that. 100%. It's always us.
It's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but the thing is, it's making the getting the timing of answering those questions and getting the recruitment right. And because you were never in a position to buy in the finished article, you're always going to have to. Well, certainly I was. It was the best decision I made, was bringing young people in and training them, because it means you're not paying top dollar,
Hmm.
and you can give them the time to develop. I mean, as it happens, the person I brought in to train on purchasing is actually my stepdaughter,
Okay.
and she's still with me today.
Brilliant.
She's my operations director at Arian. I brought in a guy to learn production engineering originally, but he's now my production manager. He was 16 when he started working for me, and I think Sean's 34, 35 now. He's been with us pretty much all of his employed life. Um, and they're your biggest achievements, I think, because these guys have come through, you know, they've learnt the hard way.
Mhm.
Fair enough, they might have learnt my way, but it's not the bad. It's clearly not a bad way. Um, and it was, luckily I got the timing right. I
Yeah.
got it right. Which, what happens if you get it wrong? You're screwing somebody around. You haven't got enough business to pay them. You've got enough work for them for 3 months, and then that goes away. It's not an easy road. You've just got to accept the fact that some days you might not get paid.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. What surprised you most about growing a business? Because there's one thing getting, like, say, from that just you to five, which is really hard. But there's another thing when you're talking about real growth in a business where you're going from, 5 to 20, 25. That's a different type of strategy. What surprised you the most, would you say?
Well, I think you get surprised pretty much every day. There's always something. I mean, one of your biggest pitfalls is sit back on your backside and think you know
Made it.
everything.
Yeah.
Because there's always something. I mean, who thought that COVID was around the corner? And I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Even like now, you've got the Ukraine war, and then you've got the Iraq war, and
Always
there's
something.
always a
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting on this one now, giving us problems with the supply chain.
Yeah.
There's no doubt we'll get problems with supply chain. Um, but I think you've just got to be very responsive. Because I don't think there's ever, I don't think there's ever any like one perfect answer to the question.
Mhm.
I think when something happens, you've got to sit and think. I mean, the thing is, you can't do nothing because if you do nothing, then you're heading to oblivion, basically.
Yeah.
And I think you've just got to make sure you sit down, analyze all the pros and cons, and then make a decision and do something. I'd rather if you did something and did it incorrectly or just did nothing, because you're always going to get it wrong if you do nothing. I remember when we had in 2008,
Hmm.
when we had
Yeah. The recession.
I mean, that was mad,
Yeah.
absolutely mad.
Overnight, wasn't it?
I mean, just everybody was tightening their belts,
Hmm.
and um, I had actually done quite well. 2007, we had grown the business. I think I had done about 1.5 million, which was fantastic for us. Considering we had only really started, I started business in 2002, but we had only started trading properly around about 2003, 4, something like that. And I had a couple of really good customers on the hook, but they were telling us I was too small in the middle of in the middle of a recession, and I ended up moving factory. And invested £500,000 in the business, and prepared it for when we came out of the recession. And that was probably the best decision I could have made at that time, because if I hadn't, I would have had to cut my cloth.
Yeah.
And at that stage, if I had started cutting cloth, then I probably wouldn't have made it back.
Hmm.
I would have been offloading staff, and I don't think I would have recovered from it.
Yeah.
And like many businesses did, a lot of businesses went to the pan.
Yeah.
Um, but I invested, bought more manufacturing equipment, moved into a factory that was about 5 times the size of the original one. Got ready for when we came out of the recession. When we came out of the recession, these luckily, I mean, I keep saying lucky. I think there is a fine balance. There's a fine balance. You have got to have the rub of the green. And these customers were true to their word. They came back. I got big orders off them, and the business just went from strength to strength. 6 years later, now on 6 million turnover, and selling a business for a fistful of dollars.
Yeah.
Um, Brilliant.
And I think there's loads of advice there, but I think the big one for me was that make a decision. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you're absolutely right. All these things happen, and you've just got to make it. I think sometimes there's the stress of being the leader, that you've got to know the answers. But actually, you can make the decision sometimes without necessarily knowing an answer. You've just got to do something because people are stood there
Oh,
watching you.
100%.
Y-
100%. Yeah.
Uh,
And one thing I have noticed as well, and luckily I've never done this. I'm not sure how I cottoned onto this, but I might have been seeing some manager stressed out one day. But if you're walking around your shop floor and your face is like thunder, or you're looking stressed to the hilt, everybody sees that. Everybody. I couldn't care less what you look like in the office. If you're in tears, if you're fuming about something, or you're upset about something, sit in the office and get it off your chest. Do what you need to do. But once you set foot outside your office, jump upside down, spin your head around, and get back out there and look as though you're in control. Look as though you're actually happy. Look as though you're relaxed about things.
yeah.
Because people cannot see how. That's why you're a leader, I suppose, at the end of the day. You cannot allow these people to see you on your
Mhm.
bad day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like I say, I've seen numerous occasions where you've got guys like flipping and screaming and ranting and raving on the shop floor because they're stressed. Well, that's your stress.
Yeah.
That's not
100
somebody else's stress. You didn't pass that stress to
Yeah.
anybody else.
Yeah.
That's your job.
100%. To and I've thoroughly enjoyed this, but to close it, what would you say? Guess two questions. Really. What would you say you're most proud of? When you finally when your last day in business finally comes and you think back and you reflect on all the years and on everything you've achieved and you've built an amazing business there. In what will you be most proud of? Do you think?
There's a few things to be honest with you. I mean, mentioning Jennifer and Sean working with me since they were 16, and they're so competent. They are so good at their job. Um, when we're sitting in meetings, it's incredible how proud you can feel when you listen to them talking because they really, really know their stuff. And I don't know if anybody ever notices, but sometimes I actually sit back in meetings and just listen to them talking. And I think, God, I'm so proud. Which is, but I've still got ambitions. I've still got ambitions. I mean, I was very calculated when I sold my shares in this business, um, because I wouldn't say I'm obsessed with it, but I'm not getting any younger. But I cannot, the type of mind I've got, I cannot just do nothing.
Yeah.
But the company that I've sold the shares to, they want me to be involved in the business as long as I want to be involved in it. And there will come a time when I can pass the business on properly in a structured way where I'm happy. We've got the financial support now. I mean, we're looking at all sorts of stuff, building a new factory, acquisitions. We're looking at new customers left, right, and centre. There's so much activity now. It's so exciting. But I want to leave a legacy. When I pack in, I want that factory to still be working, still be serving, still be creating jobs, still be able to help people earn a crust when I'm dead and buried. That's important to me.
Amazing. Look, it's such a good way to close. And look, thank you for this. I've thoroughly enjoyed it for many reasons. Maybe because there's loads of lessons I've learned, and I guess I always take a bit of time at this stage just to sort of think about that. And I think for me, you know, a big key part of everything you've done and your management style and how you obviously work with people has been communication. Do you know what I mean? I think
Mm.
it's a lesson for people that just treat people like humans and communicate with them properly, communicate about what you're thinking. It doesn't have to be this dictatorship, do as I say, because you've built a career and businesses from doing this, and you've worked with people. And there's a massive key lesson for people like, because I think people stress themselves out so much that they need to be this certain leader and the leader that they've seen elsewhere or they've read books about, where if you just be yourself and be authentic, people will follow you. And if you
Mhm.
work with people, they'll work with you. And that's
Mm.
a key lesson for me. But look, for someone who has also built a business and gone through those similar experiences where you are the last to be paid and not paid at some times, but actually you also are the one that has all the excitement and you make
Mm.
decisions, and what you're leaving behind a long way to get, in terms of, you've got many years left, like you said, but your path is the exact path I love to go from. Do you know what I mean? So I've took a lot of inspiration off the back of that, you don't just want to leave and go off in the sunset. You want to leave a proper legacy behind you from all the work you've done.
Mm.
And no, but so thank you, man. This has been a real opportunity, this for me. So I really appreciate it.
There's one final thing I'd
Of
like to
course.
share with you, which is a bit of I find it a bit of a frustration when I hear people talking about mental health.
Mhm.
Everything I've spoken to you about now, um, since I was 28 years old up until about 5 years ago, I suffered with severe anxiety.
Mhm.
Um, eventually, developed into depression and anxiety. And I've managed to come through all of that. Never had any time off work. Always stuck in. In fairness, mate, I used to find when I was at my busiest, I was probably at my most relaxed.
Okay.
But I think as a message in there when it comes to mental health, that people tend to think that if there's an issue with everybody's got a level of mental health, whether it's
Yeah.
good mental health or bad mental health. Everybody's got it,
Yeah.
whether we like it or not. And there's areas in the not just in this country, but a lot of the populace that thinks the best thing to do is to do nothing and sit in bed all day, and it's definitely not. Definitely not. You can hold a job down and forge a great career, even if you have issues.
Yeah. And that tremendous and again, look, I resonate with that. I'm someone also that struggle with anxiety, and I think, like you say, it's not something you just have then don't. I think mental health is mental health is the same as physical health. It goes up, it goes down. You need to manage it daily and weekly to keep things at bay. And often it doesn't matter what role someone does. Someone could work on the shop floor, and someone could own the whole business. Everyone has some level of anxiety or mental health, don't they? I think that's important to recognize that even leads of businesses, we have real worries that can develop into real issues.
Okay.
So no, and thank you for sharing that, because that alone will help a lot of people who, struggle and battled and continue to for this type of stuff. And the more people talk about this, the more it helps people, because it is a real problem. It's a real problem, and a huge problem in manufacturing, which is mainly populated by men. And the data tells us that, statistically is young men. We actually do a charity walk every year. We've done it for the last 4 years. Called Manufacturers Ramble On, and we do a 10K walk from Suter Lighthouse to Roker and back, just 10K, and we have a few speakers who specialise in this type of stuff, and they talk about it. They stop people every now and again, and they get people talking about mental health and all that type of stuff. And it's really impact. We know what's just great, just a group of people who are going for a walk and just talking to people they might not know. And I just think, but it gets back to, like, if people are out there going for a walk and doing something, and I completely agree. You've got to just keep on going and understand that other people have these problems. So obviously, you are welcome, and everyone else listening to this is welcome to come to that. And again, it'll be some point in June, because I just think we need to do more stuff like this, don't we? Something as that.
100%. Closer to the time, give us a shout, because
Yeah.
it is something I would like to support in some way.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for listening or watching this episode of the Manufacturing Leaders podcast. Please just like or subscribe. It really helps grow the show and obviously improve the industry. If you want any more information about Theo James, as I mentioned midway through the episode, please get in touch with me or the team. I would love to talk about how we can help you directly or your business. We are more than just a recruiter, and I know people say that, but it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. We are in business for much more than just a bums on seats approach. We want to help people grow. We want to help improve their lives. And ultimately, I want to work with businesses and people who share the same values as we do. And that's something I'm incredibly passionate about. So please, if that is you and you are passionate about that dream role or passionate about your people, please get in touch with me or the team. I would absolutely love to talk a bit more detail. Thank you very much. Speak soon.